Hi, South Knoll first graders, Miss Dawkin here, and we are going to be talking about something new in science this week. We've talked about it a little bit before we went on spring break, but we're going to talk about it again. So I don't know if you've been spending as much time outside as I have, but it has been beautiful weather, so I've been outside a lot, and I've noticed some things while I've been out there about how we all work together. And so I look at the grass and the things that the grass needs to survive and where it gets it from. And then I look at the bugs and the birds flying around and I think about where they're getting what they need, because I know when I need food, I just go get my food. And so this week we're going to be talking about interdependency again. Now remember, that's a big word that we learned. And all that it means is that all living things depend on other living things to survive. So the grass is a living thing, and it depends on other things to survive. So we all depend on each other in different ways. So if you look at this cow, the cow is depending on the grass for food. So the grass is a living thing, the cow is a living thing, and the cow depends on the grass for food. Now, how does the grass depend on the cow? Well, all animals, when we breathe in one type of gas. When we breathe out a type of gas that the grass and other plants need to make their food. So they both depend on each other. The cow needs the grass for food. The grass needs the gas that the cow breathes out to make its food. So they depend on each other. If you look at this picture, this is a little boy feeding his fish. Those fish depend on that little boy for their food because he is feeding them. If he didn't feed them because they're not out in the wild, they would not get food. So they are depending on that little boy to get their food. And living things can depend on other living things for more than just food. They can also depend on them for shelter. So if you look at this bird nest with the eggs in it, it is depending on a tree to hold up the nest. So the bird depends on the tree for shelter, for its eggs and for itself. If you notice, birds like to hide in trees to get them away from predators, from things that would eat them. So living things can also depend on other living things for shelter, not just for food. And this also made me think about, well, things eat things, so how can we look at that? So the next part of this week is talking about food chains. Food chains show what animals eat, which tells me where energy goes. Because when I'm really tired and I eat some food, it gives me energy. So when you eat something, that's energy coming into your body. So animals are the same way. When they eat something, that's energy going to them. So the energy is moving from one living thing to something else when they eat it. Now, food chains always start with the sun because the sun is a great source of energy. And the sun always gives energy to a plant to make their own food. So that's how our food chains always start, with the sun and with a type of plant. So we're going to go through some examples before I tell you what your assignment is this week. So here's an example of a food chain. This is an example of a food chain that would happen in a prairie. So remember what I said, the food chain always starts with the sun. So the sun would go first. Sorry about that, I had to figure out my computer. So, it always starts with the sun, so the sun would go first. Now the sun gives energy to this bunch grass, which is a type of grass in the prairie. So the bunch grass takes the energy from the sun and makes its own food. Then a jackrabbit comes along and eats the bunch grass. So the grass is giving its energy to the jackrabbit when it eats it. And last, the jackrabbit gives energy to the coyote when the coyote eats the jackrabbit. So that's an example of a food chain. When I'm looking at a food chain that's already made, the coyote eats the jackrabbit eats the grass, the grass eats the sun. Or it doesn't eat the sun, but it gets energy from the sun to make its own food. So that's how we read a food chain. So let's do one more. This one is called a backyard food chain. So it's different things that you might see in your backyard. And these are some things that I've seen while I've been outside exploring my backyard. So remember, food chain always starts with the sun. The sun then gives energy to a plant. So in this case, my plant is a rose bush. So the rose bush absorbs energy from the sun and makes its own food. That's what makes plants really cool and special. They make their own food. Then the rose bush gives its energy to the beetle because the beetle will eat the leaves and the things off of the rose bush. And then the beetle gives its energy to a mouse because the mouse will come along and will eat the beetle. So it gets energy from the beetle, from its food. Then the mouse gives energy to a snake when a snake comes up and eats the mouse for food. And last, the snake gives energy to a hawk because the hawk will come up and eat the snake. So as you can see, a food chain is an example of interdependency. All living things depend on each other to survive. If we take out the snake from this food chain and the snake is no longer there, then the hawk doesn't have any food. And then the hawks will all disappear. They'll all die because they don't have food. So we all need each other, and that's what interdependency is. So when you're outside this week, I want you to pay attention to the living things around you and what they might need to survive. And you're going to read a book that is called The Old Lady Who Swallowed a Food Chain, and it gives you another example of a food chain. And then your job this week is to come up with your own food chain. So you could go outside and look in what you see outside. What do you see the sun giving energy to? Maybe you see it giving energy to the grass. What do you see eating the grass? What do you see eating that thing? How is the energy going from one thing to the next? So that is your job this week, to come up with your own food chain that is different from any of the food chains that we've looked at. So enjoy being outside and exploring all of the living things. Bye.